Men have quietly walked away, and the world is feeling it now in ways no one saw coming. Listen up, friends, grab a seat and something cold because we are diving deep into something that has been building for years and is hitting like a freight train right now. Everywhere you turn, the signs are clear that the old game between men and women has fundamentally changed, and not in the way most people expected. Women who once held all the cards in the dating world are waking up to empty hands and a future that looks a lot harder than they were promised. This is not some temporary trend. It is the result of years of shifts in how men see their own lives, their value, and what they are willing to put up with. Stick with me all the way through because by the end, you will see exactly why this moment matters so much for every man out there trying to build something real and lasting for himself, and why the desperation we are seeing from the other side tells us the change is real and probably permanent. If you are enjoying these angry guy videos and they are helping you see things clearer, you can show some support by buying me a Red Bull with a one-time gift or via a monthly pledge using the link in the description of the video. Men have reached a point where they are no longer willing to play the role of provider and emotional support without getting anything meaningful in return, and that decision is rippling out across society in powerful ways. For decades, men were expected to chase, to provide, to protect, and to sacrifice their own peace and resources in the name of relationships that often left them drained and unfulfilled. They did it because that was the path laid out for them by family, by culture, and by the stories they grew up hearing about what it meant to be a man. Yet over time, the balance shifted dramatically. Movements came along that painted men as the constant problem, the inherent danger, the ones who needed to be fixed or held accountable at every turn. Instead of partnership, many men started to see a setup where their efforts were taken for granted. Their boundaries were ignored, and their successes were treated as something owed rather than earned together. They watched as conversations turned into accusations, where facts were pushed aside in favor of feelings, and where any attempt to discuss real differences was met with shutdowns or blame. This was not sustainable, and slowly but surely, men began to step back, not with loud protests or dramatic declarations, but with quiet choices to focus on their own survival, their own growth, and their own futures. They started choosing hobbies that brought real satisfaction, careers that rewarded their effort, and friendships that were based on mutual respect instead of one sided giving. The result is a dating landscape that feels almost unrecognizable to many. Women who grew up believing that men would always pursue them because of basic biology and social expectations are now facing long stretches of silence. Approaches have dried up. Men are not sliding into messages with clever openers or offering to cover expensive dinners just for the chance at some company. They have learned through experience and through watching others that those setups often lead nowhere good. The free meals, the attention without commitment, the benefits of a boyfriend without the responsibilities of a girlfriend. Those doors have closed for a lot of people. Men realized they could keep their hard earned money in their own pockets, build their own stability, and avoid the exhaustion that came from trying to negotiate with emotions over logic every single day. This walk away did not happen overnight. It came after years of seeing patterns repeat themselves across relationships and across the wider culture. Men noticed how female friendships often felt transactional, where support flowed one way and demands came back the other. They saw how conversations with women could leave them feeling worn down, while the same discussion seemed to energize the other side because it was never really about reaching understanding. It was about validating feelings no matter the cost. Arguments became pointless because the rules kept changing and the goalposts moved whenever it suited the moment. Instead of continuing to bang their heads against that wall, men chose peace. They chose to invest in themselves, their health, their finances, their skills, and their independence. They prioritized sleep over late night emotional labor. They put money into savings accounts and investments instead of funding lifestyles that were not their own. They found satisfaction in mastering a craft or hitting personal goals that no one else could take credit for. This was not about anger toward women as individuals, but about recognizing that the overall setup was broken and choosing not to participate in something that consistently left men on the losing end. Now we are seeing the consequences play out in real time. Economic pressures are mounting, especially in places like the United States, where costs keep rising and opportunities feel tighter for everyone. Women who relied on the idea that a man would always step in to help cover the gap are finding that safety net is no longer there. They talk openly about struggling to make ends meet, about the difficulty of building a stable life without that traditional support structure. Some have ended up in tough situations, living in cars, or facing homelessness because the backup plans they counted on never materialized. The government systems that once promised to fill the role of provider have their own limits, and cracks are showing everywhere. The panic is real, and it shows up in the way some women lash out online or in conversations blaming men for abandoning them or betraying some unspoken agreement. Yet from the men's side, there is mostly silence and continued focus on self preservation. Men are not rushing in to rescue or to debate because they have learned those paths lead back to the same dead ends. They understand that nature designed humans with certain complementary strengths, but when one side rejects the mutual benefits and tries to rewrite the rules entirely, the other side has every right to opt out. Women traded community and family support for promises of independence through state systems, and now those systems are strained, while the personal connections that could have provided real security have been weakened or destroyed. This creates a sobering picture for the future. Without strong partnerships and stable families, societies face real challenges in maintaining order and prosperity. Birth rates drop, communities weaken, economic productivity shifts as men channel their energy differently. The women who once felt entitled to certain outcomes are confronting a reality where their choices have consequences and no one is obligated to shield them from those outcomes. It is a hard truth, but one that was a long time coming after years of unbalanced expectations. Men today are building lives that do not revolve around chasing validation or filling endless emotional voids. They are learning trades, mastering finances, traveling solo when it suits them, and forming bonds with other men who share the same values of self reliance and straight talk. They are done being the constant fixer, the wallet, the shoulder to cry on without reciprocity. This shift feels liberating for many because it allows them to breathe and to think clearly about what they actually want for their own lives rather than what was demanded of them. The desperation on the other side reveals how much the old dynamic depended on men's willingness to keep showing up no matter what. When that willingness disappears, the whole structure starts to wobble. Women who spent years focused on careers and independence at the expense of learning how to build real partnerships are now realizing the clock moves forward for everyone. Fertility windows close, opportunities for stable family life narrow when men are no longer interested in the old script. The videos and posts expressing confusion and frustration show a generation that was not prepared for this outcome. Yet men are not going back. They have tasted the freedom of keeping their resources, their time, and their mental energy for themselves and their goals. They have seen that real happiness often comes from discipline, from purpose, and from relationships that add value instead of subtract it. This is not hatred or giving up on life. It is a recalibration towards something healthier and more sustainable for the individual man. Society may not like it, but individual men are thriving in ways they never did when they were stuck in the old cycle. Think about the young guys coming up now who are watching this unfold. They see their older brothers, uncles, and friends choosing different paths. And they are learning early that they do not have to repeat the same mistakes. They focus on education that leads to real skills, on building bodies and minds that are strong, and on avoiding traps that drain them before they even get started. This creates a ripple effect where more men opt for self improvement and independence, which in turn makes the dating market even more selective. Women who want to succeed in this new environment will have to adapt by offering genuine value, respect, and partnership instead of demands and entitlement. The economic side cannot be ignored either. With living costs climbing and wages not always keeping pace, men are making calculated decisions to protect their financial futures. They avoid commitments that could lead to massive losses in the event things go south. They keep assets separate and focus on personal net worth rather than joint ventures that carry hidden risks. This pragmatism is born from seeing too many stories of men who gave everything only to end up starting over with nothing after a split. The data on these outcomes is sobering, and men are paying attention even if open discussion of it gets shouted down. At the same time, men are rediscovering the joy of simple things. A quiet evening, working on a project, a workout that pushes their limits, time spent learning history or skills that connect them to something bigger than the daily grind. These activities recharge them in ways that unbalanced relationships never could. They are forming communities of like minded guys who encourage each other to stay strong and to keep building rather than falling back into old patterns. This support network is powerful because it is based on shared experience and mutual accountability instead of emotional manipulation. The wake up call here is that reality does not care about feelings or past promises. Biology, social structures, and economic forces all have their own logic. And when men align their actions with that logic, instead of fighting against it, they gain clarity and strength. Women are now facing that same reality without the buffer they once enjoyed. The screams of betrayal ring hollow. Because men did not create this situation, they simply stopped participating in a game that was rigged against them. As this continues, we can expect more conversations about what healthy relationships could look like in the future, but only if both sides are willing to be honest about strengths, weaknesses, and mutual needs. For now, men are focused on their own path, and that choice is reshaping everything around them. The desperation, the anger, and the confusion from the other side are understandable, but they do not change the fundamental decision men have made to value their own peace and progress above all else. This moment in history feels like a turning point where the old assumptions about gender roles and expectations are being tested like never before. Men who once felt obligated to always step up are learning they have the right to choose when and how they engage. They are prioritizing long term stability over short term validation. They are building lives that do not depend on someone else's approval or emotional state. This independence brings a quiet confidence that is hard to shake once you experience it. Women who are paying attention might start to see the value in offering real partnership respect for boundaries and appreciation for the efforts men do make when they choose to make them. The ones who double down on blame and demands will likely face continued isolation and struggle. The choice is theirs, but the consequences are becoming clear every day. Men are not coming back to the old dynamic in large numbers because they have found something better for themselves. The broader societal impacts are still unfolding. Lower marriage rates, delayed family shifts in consumer spending, and changes in how communities function all trace back to this fundamental withdrawal. It is a sobering reminder that you cannot keep taking without giving and expect the flow to continue forever. Men gave for a long time, often at great personal cost, And when the return on that investment turned negative, they adjusted accordingly. For the individual man listening to this, the message is straightforward. Focus on what you can control. Build your body, your mind, your finances, and your character. Seek peace in your daily life. Avoid situations that drain you without reward. Surround yourself with people who add value and who respect your boundaries. This path is not always easy, but it leads to a level of freedom and self respect that is worth every sacrifice along the way. The world will keep spinning and people will keep adapting, but this particular shift feels different because it comes from millions of individual decisions made in quiet moments of realization. Men are done being used up and thrown aside when they no longer serve a purpose. They want relationships that are mutual or they want none at all. And that preference is changing the landscape in profound ways. As we move forward, it will be interesting to see how society responds to these changes. Some will try to shame men back into line. Others will attempt to create new incentives or narratives to restore the old balance. But the men who have already walked away know their own worth, and they are unlikely to be swayed by words that do not match actions. They have seen through the games, and they are playing a different one now, one centered on self mastery and long term vision. This is the reality we are living in, and it is one that rewards those who face it with clear eyes and steady hands. The desperation we see is a signal that the change is deep and meaningful. It is a wake up call for anyone still caught in old patterns to break free and build something better for themselves. The future belongs to those who understand this shift and act on it with purpose and resolve. Continuing on this path, men are discovering layers of strength they did not know they possessed. The energy that once went into chasing and maintaining unbalanced connections now fuels personal projects, business ideas, and skill development that pay dividends over time. A man who is not constantly worried about the next emotional crisis or financial demand can think more clearly, plan more effectively, and execute with greater consistency. This compounds in powerful ways, creating momentum that is hard to stop once it gets going. Women on the other side are confronting the gap between what they were told would happen and what is actually unfolding. The idea that independence meant total freedom without trade offs is being tested harshly by economic realities and biological clocks. Many are expressing frustration because the support systems they counted on, either from men or from larger institutions, are not delivering as promised. This creates a cycle of anger and confusion that only deepens the divide. Men are not obligated to fix this for them. They have their own lives to lead and their own challenges to overcome. By stepping back, they force a reckoning that might eventually lead to better outcomes for those willing to adapt. But that process cannot be rushed or faked. It requires honest self reflection on all sides, something that has been in short supply for a long time. The storytelling here is not about villains and victims, but about cause and effect, human nature, and the choices we make when the old ways stop working. Men walked away because continuing forward on the same path was leading to predictable pain and loss. They chose self preservation, and in doing so, they opened up space for new ways of living that prioritize their own well being without apology. This is a raw truth, but one that carries real power for those who embrace it. As more men align with this mindset, the cultural conversation shifts. Discussions about relationships become more grounded in reality rather than fantasy. Expectations adjust to match what is actually possible rather than what was marketed through media and social narratives. This recalibration is uncomfortable for some, but necessary for long term health, both for individuals and for society as a whole. The men who are living this out are not isolated or miserable. Many report higher levels of satisfaction, greater focus, and a sense of control over their destinies that was missing before. They travel when they want work on passions that excite them and build networks that support their growth. They avoid the traps that once seemed inevitable, and they do it with a straightforward approach that cuts through the noise. This is the quiet revolution happening all around us, and its effects will only grow stronger with time. Men who have stepped back from the old expectations are now channeling their focus into areas that deliver measurable returns on their investment of time and energy, creating a foundation that feels solid and self sustaining in a world that often seems chaotic and unpredictable. This redirection shows up in everything from mastering technical skills that lead to better paying work to exploring physical training routines that build resilience and mental clarity. They are reading more deeply into history, economics, and human behavior patterns, understanding how societies have shifted in the past when imbalances grew too large to ignore. The stories of previous generations who faced economic hardship and cultural upheaval serve as lessons rather than distant tales, reminding everyone that when one group consistently extracts more than it contributes, the arrangement eventually collapses under its own weight. The current economic pressures amplify this shift because everyday costs for housing, food, and basic necessities keep climbing, while wages for many remain stagnant or grow too slowly to close the gap. Men see this reality clearly and decide that tying their financial future to relationships that carry high risk and low reward no longer makes sense. They build emergency funds, invest in assets they control outright, and develop side skills that can generate income independently. This approach brings a sense of security that no external promise can match because it rests on their own efforts rather than hoping someone else will balance the scales. Women facing the same rising costs without the traditional support networks are discovering how quickly stability can slip away when there is no partner contributing equally or when past choices have limited their options for building that stability alone. This creates a sobering landscape where the promise of effortless independence collides with the hard edges of real world demands. Communities that once relied on strong family units to provide mutual aid and emotional support now see gaps widening as fewer people form those lasting bonds. The ripple effects touch everything from local economies that depend on stable households to broader cultural narratives that struggle to explain why so many are opting out of the script they were sold. Men are not disappearing from society, they are simply participating on different terms, focusing on self development and selective engagement rather than default obligation. This choice forces a reevaluation of what mutual respect actually looks like when it cannot be demanded, but must be earned through consistent actions. Looking back at how these patterns developed helps explain the depth of the current change. For a long time, cultural stories emphasized male responsibility without equally highlighting female accountability, creating an environment where expectations grew one sided over decades. Media portrayals often showed men as bumbling or disposable, while elevating narratives of female empowerment without showing the trade offs involved. Over time, this messaging shaped attitudes and behaviors until the disconnect became too obvious to ignore. Men absorbed these influences early on, tried to live up to them, and eventually recognized the mismatch between the ideal and the reality they experienced. The quiet walk away represents a collective realization that continuing the pattern would lead to repeated cycles of frustration and loss, so they chose to break it instead. The storytelling of human history is filled with moments when groups adapted to changing conditions by redefining their roles and priorities. In this case, men are adapting by prioritizing long term viability over short term social approval. They form friendships based on shared goals and honest feedback rather than emotional venting sessions that drain resources without resolution. They pursue hobbies and interests that challenge them intellectually and physically, creating lives rich with purpose, even when those lives do not center around romantic pursuit. This shift brings a raw honesty to daily existence where decisions are weighed against clear criteria of value addition rather than vague societal pressures. The result is a growing number of men who report feeling more grounded and capable, even as external voices criticize their choices. Women who are navigating this new terrain often express confusion because the pathways they were encouraged to follow did not prepare them for the absence of automatic male investment. Career achievements provide satisfaction for some, yet they do not replace the practical and emotional benefits that came from complementary partnerships in earlier eras. The economic independence that was celebrated now shows its limits when faced with unexpected setbacks or the natural progression of aging. Fertility concerns become more pressing as time moves forward and options for starting families narrow without willing partners. This is not about blame, but about the straightforward observation that human biology and social structures have limits that no amount of messaging can fully override. The intensity of reactions from those feeling the effects reveals how deeply the previous dynamic was embedded in expectations. Some respond with anger or attempts to shame men back into previous roles, but these efforts often backfire by reinforcing the reason men stepped away in the first place. Others begin the difficult work of self reflection, examining what genuine contributions look like in a balanced arrangement. The ones who succeed in this adaptation will likely find more stable connections because they approach relationships from a place of mutual strength rather than entitlement. Meanwhile, men continue building their paths undisturbed by the noise focusing on what they can influence directly. Future projections based on current trends suggest that this recalibration will reshape how generations interact with institutions and each other. Educational systems may need to adjust to serve young men who are less inclined to follow traditional college routes when those routes no longer guarantee the outcomes they once did. Workplace dynamics could evolve as more men negotiate from positions of independence rather than desperation to provide. Consumer markets will shift as spending patterns change, with fewer resources funneled into lifestyles designed to impress or maintain unbalanced pairings. These changes are neither good nor bad in absolute terms, but they represent adaptation to new realities that cannot be wished away. Men who embrace this mindset often discover hidden reserves of creativity and discipline that were previously scattered across obligations that yielded little return. They tackle projects that once seemed daunting, whether starting small businesses, learning complex trades, or diving into fields that require sustained concentration. The mental space, freed up from avoiding constant negotiation, allows for deeper problem solving and innovation. This personal growth compounds, creating individuals who are harder to manipulate and more capable of weathering uncertainty. It is a powerful demonstration of how removing draining elements from life can unlock potential that benefits not only the man himself, but also those around him in authentic ways. The broader cultural conversation is slowly catching up to these individual decisions, though, as it often lags behind the actual behavior shifts. Discussions about relationship dynamics are becoming more direct, with less tolerance for narratives that ignore basic economic and biological facts. People are examining data on marriage outcomes, happiness levels, and financial stability with clear eyes, recognizing patterns that were downplayed for years. This honesty serves as a wake up call for anyone still operating under outdated assumptions because it highlights the need to align actions with evidence rather than hope or tradition alone. Men leading this change are doing so through example rather than confrontation, showing that self focused living can coexist with societal contribution when it is chosen freely. As economic conditions tighten further, the divide between those who prepared through independence and those who relied on external support will become more pronounced. Men who built their own buffers are better positioned to handle fluctuations in job markets or living costs. They avoid overextension and maintain flexibility that allows them to pivot when needed. This pragmatism stems from hard earned lessons about the fragility of arrangements built on unequal giving. Women facing similar pressures without equivalent preparation encounter steeper challenges, highlighting the importance of realistic planning over optimistic projections. The sobering truth is that nature and economics reward preparation and penalize dependency regardless of past social contracts. Rhetorically, one can trace how the emphasis on individual feelings over collective responsibilities contributed to this outcome. When personal emotions became the primary lens for decision making, the structures that required compromise and mutual sacrifice weakened. Men observed this shift and responded by protecting their own emotional and financial boundaries more rigorously. They seek interactions that are straightforward and reciprocal, avoiding those that demand endless validation without return. This creates space for friendships and pursuits that energize rather than deplete, fostering a sense of camaraderie among men who share the same outlook. The raw authority in this approach comes from lived experience and observable results rather than theoretical ideals. The pacing of societal change often feels slow until a tipping point is reached and then it accelerates rapidly. We appear to be in one of those acceleration phases where the accumulated individual choices of men stepping back are producing visible effects across dating norms, family formation, and cultural attitudes. Young men absorbing these lessons early are making different decisions about education, careers, and relationships, setting them on trajectories that diverge from what their parents' generation followed. This generational transmission of wisdom through observation and quiet example carries more weight than any formal lecture because it is grounded in reality. The women who recognize this pattern and adjust accordingly will position themselves better for mutual success, while those who resist may find themselves increasingly isolated from the outcomes they desire. Continuing this exploration, the impact on mental well being cannot be overstated. Men who have distanced themselves from unbalanced dynamics report lower stress levels and greater clarity in daily decision making. They sleep better, eat with more intention, and pursue activities that align with their values instead of external demands. This improved state allows them to show up more effectively in areas they choose to engage, whether professional endeavors or selective personal connections. The contrast with previous states of constant emotional labor is stark, underscoring why so many refuse to return to it. It is a straightforward acknowledgement that protecting one's peace is not selfish, but essential for sustainable living. Economic independence also opens doors to experiences that enrich life in non material ways. Men travel to places that interest them without needing to coordinate around someone else's schedule. They invest time in learning languages, instruments, or other skills that expand their worldview. These pursuits build confidence and provide outlets for creativity that were previously sidelined. The freedom from performative roles allows authentic self expression, leading to deeper satisfaction than what came from trying to meet impossible standards. This is the raw truth of the shift. It liberates energy that was previously locked in cycles of diminishing returns. Societal structures that depended on high rates of family formation and stable partnerships are adapting unevenly to the new normal. Some institutions push back with incentives or messaging designed to restore previous patterns, but these often fail when they do not address root causes of distrust and imbalance. Others begin to innovate, creating spaces that support individual autonomy while still fostering community. The men navigating this are focused on what works for them, personally avoiding ideological battles in favor of practical results. Their example inspires others to examine their own lives with similar honesty, leading to widespread but quiet transformations. The wake up call extends to recognizing that human nature has consistent patterns across time. People respond to incentives and disincentives in predictable ways. When the incentives for men to engage fully in traditional roles diminished, so did their participation. Restoring balance requires addressing those incentives directly through actions that demonstrate value and respect rather than demands. Until that happens, the separation will likely persist and even deepen as more men experience the benefits of their choices. This is not a temporary phase, but a logical response to conditions that developed over decades. As we delve further into the implications, the role of technology in facilitating this change becomes clear. Online resources allow men to learn skills, share experiences, and access information without gatekeepers shaping the narrative. They connect with like minded individuals across distances, building networks that reinforce self reliance. This digital landscape accelerates was the spread of practical knowledge about financial management, health optimization, and relationship dynamics based on evidence rather than sentiment. Men use these tools to make informed decisions that prioritize their long term interests, creating a feedback loop of improvement and independence. Women interacting with this reality sometimes attempt to bridge the gap by offering different approaches, but success depends on authenticity and consistency. Superficial changes rarely fool those who have learned to spot patterns. Genuine shifts toward mutual respect and shared responsibility stand a better chance, but they must overcome years of accumulated skepticism. The process is slow and requires patience on all sides, yet it holds potential for better outcomes when approached with clear eyes. For now, many men prefer to maintain their distance, focusing energy where it yields reliable returns. The authoritative voice in this narrative comes from observing cause and effect without illusion. Societies thrive when their members align with practical realities rather than fighting them. Men aligning with self preservation and selective engagement are doing exactly that. They are not withdrawing from life, but redirecting their participation towards sustainable paths. This choice carries profound implications for everyone involved, and understanding it fully requires setting aside emotional reactions in favor of straightforward analysis. The future will be shaped by those who grasp this and act accordingly with discipline and foresight. Economic forecasts indicate continued pressure on middle class stability, which further encourages men to conserve resources and avoid high risk commitments. They calculate the potential costs of traditional arrangements, including legal, financial, and emotional factors, and often conclude that independence offers better odds. This calculation is not cynical, but rational, given observable data on outcomes. Women facing parallel economic headwinds without the same safety nets experience heightened urgency, yet solutions remain elusive without broader adaptation. The situation calls for honest dialogue, but such dialogue only works when both sides engage without preconceived blame. Rhetorically, the arc of the story resembles classic tales of adaptation, where protagonists face changing worlds and must evolve or falter. Men are evolving by embracing principles of self mastery and boundary setting. They build lives that reflect their values and capabilities rather than external scripts. This evolution brings challenges, including loneliness at times, but also profound rewards in autonomy and purpose. The raw honesty of admitting past missteps and choosing differently sets a powerful precedent for others. It is a sobering yet empowering realization that individuals hold more agency than they were led to believe. As this continues, the cultural emphasis may gradually shift toward practical skills, resilience, and realistic expectations. Education could incorporate more emphasis on personal finance, emotional regulation, and critical thinking to prepare younger generations for the current landscape. Families might focus on teaching balanced responsibilities rather than one sided obligations. These adjustments would help mitigate some of the harsher effects of the transition, though they require time and willingness to change established patterns. Men leading by example are already demonstrating what such adjustments look like in practice. The storytelling element here highlights human resilience in the face of imbalance. When one path closes, another opens for those willing to walk it. Men walking this new path are finding strength in simplicity, discipline, and clear priorities. They avoid the traps of endless pursuit and instead cultivate inner resources that sustain them through uncertainty. This approach resonates because it aligns with fundamental aspects of male nature, the drive to build, protect, and achieve on their own terms. Recognizing and honoring that nature rather than suppressing it leads to more authentic living for everyone involved. Broader global trends mirror some of these dynamics, though local economic and cultural factors create variations. In many developed nations, similar patterns of delayed family formation and shifting priorities are emerging, driven by comparable pressures. Men worldwide are responding to incentives in parallel ways, suggesting the phenomenon runs deeper than any single society. Understanding these global threads provides context for why the change feels both personal and universal. It is a collective response to modern conditions that challenge traditional structures. Men who have made this transition often emphasize the importance of routine and self accountability. They maintain physical fitness as a cornerstone of mental health. They track their finances meticulously, ensuring every decision serves their goals. They seek knowledge, continuously expanding their toolkit for navigating life. These habits compound, creating individuals who are robust against external shocks. The contrast with previous states of reactivity is striking, underscoring the value of proactive living. This is the straightforward path that more are choosing, and its effects are accumulating steadily. The sobering wake up call remains that ignoring these shifts will not make them disappear. Reality operates on its own timeline, and those who adapt thrive while those who resist struggle. Men have adapted and are thriving in their chosen ways. The invitation for others is to examine their own positions with similar clarity and make adjustments that serve long term well being. This requires courage and honesty, but the rewards justify the effort. The world is changing, and those who see it clearly are best positioned to shape their place within it. Expanding on the personal development aspect, men are diving into disciplines that build character, such as Stoic philosophy, practical trades, and strategic thinking. They read accounts of historical figures who faced adversity and emerged stronger, drawing parallels to their own situations. This intellectual engagement provides frameworks for decision making that prioritize logic and evidence. It counters the emotional turbulence that once dominated many interactions, leading to greater equanimity. The raw authority comes from applying these principles, consistently resulting in lives that are ordered and purposeful. Economically, the decision to retain resources rather than disperse them creates opportunities for wealth building that were previously inaccessible. Men invest in real estate skills training or businesses that generate passive income. They avoid lifestyle inflation, choosing instead to live below their means and direct the difference toward future security. This discipline pays off over years, creating options that dependency cannot match. Women observing this may recognize the appeal of similar strategies, though the path differs based on individual circumstances. The key lesson is the power of delayed gratification and strategic allocation. Socially, the networks men form emphasize accountability and mutual encouragement. They challenge each other to improve without descending into competition for validation. These bonds are based on respect for boundaries and shared values of self reliance. They provide support during tough times without creating obligation or drama. This model of friendship stands in contrast to more entangled dynamics, offering relief and strength. It allows men to maintain their independence while still benefiting from community. As time progresses, the cumulative effect of these choices will likely influence policy and cultural norms. Lawmakers may consider adjustments to family related regulations to reflect changing behaviors. Cultural producers might craft stories that resonate with the new realities rather than outdated ideals. These evolutions will be uneven, but inevitable as the data mounts. Men are not waiting for these changes. They are living their lives in the meantime with focus and determination. The narrative arc here is one of quiet empowerment through subtraction, removing what no longer serves to make room for what does. Men have subtracted the elements that drain them and added layers of self sufficiency and purpose. The result is a more resilient version of masculinity that serves individuals and, by extension, society. This is not regression, but progression toward balance after a period of distortion. Understanding this distinction is crucial for grasping the depth of the shift. Further exploration reveals how technology and remote work have enabled greater independence, allowing men to structure their days around personal priorities rather than external demands. They optimize their environments for productivity and peace, creating sanctuaries that support their goals. This control over daily life enhances overall satisfaction and reduces vulnerability to outside pressures. It is a practical manifestation of the walk away mindset applied to modern tools. Men who have embraced this new direction in life are uncovering strengths in areas that previous generations often overlooked because they were too busy fulfilling external roles that left little room for personal exploration. They dive into practical sciences like mechanics and engineering, not just for income, but for the deep satisfaction that comes from understanding how systems truly function and fixing them with their own hands. This hands on mastery translates into confidence that carries over into every decision they make, whether evaluating a business opportunity or simply maintaining their living space in a way that supports long term health and efficiency. The raw truth is that when men stop pouring energy into situations that offer diminishing returns, they redirect it toward building capabilities that no one can take away, creating a form of wealth that exists beyond bank accounts or social status. This redirection also extends to how they approach health and physical conditioning, turning what was once a chore into a cornerstone of daily existence that sharpens both body and mind for the challenges ahead. They experiment with nutrition strategies that optimize energy levels without relying on quick fixes or trends, instead, focusing on what delivers consistent results based on their individual biology and lifestyle demands. Sleep becomes non negotiable because they have seen how fatigue clouds judgment and makes a person vulnerable to poor choices that compound over time. The sobering realization hits that society pushed men toward constant output without replenishment. And now, by choosing balance, they achieve levels of performance that surprise even themselves. Friends at the bar would nod along to this because we all know someone who transformed once they stopped running on empty for everyone else's benefit. Global patterns reveal similar movements in different cultures where economic shifts and changing social norms push men toward independence, though the expressions vary based on local traditions and pressures. In some regions, men focus on entrepreneurial ventures that leverage technology to reach international markets, bypassing traditional career ladders that no longer guarantee security. They study international economics to anticipate trends rather than react to them, positioning themselves ahead of disruption that could otherwise derail their progress. This worldwide perspective shows that the core issue is not unique to one country, but stems from universal human tendencies when incentives become misaligned. The authoritative takeaway is that men everywhere are adapting in ways that protect their futures, and the collective outcome is a quieter but more resilient global male population, less inclined to prop up systems that fail to value their contributions equally. Psychological resilience grows stronger through this process as men learn to navigate emotions without being controlled by them, recognizing that feelings provide information but should not dictate long term strategy. They practice techniques for maintaining focus amid distractions, drawing from disciplines that emphasize mental discipline and clear thinking. This allows them to evaluate relationships or opportunities with detachment, seeing the full picture instead of getting lost in momentary highs or pressures. The wake up call here is straightforward. Many spent years ignoring their own internal signals in favor of meeting demands that were never truly reciprocal. And now, by listening to those signals, they avoid repeating past errors. It feels like a conversation among friends where we admit the relief that comes from no longer pretending everything is fine when the evidence says otherwise. Future generations of young men are absorbing these lessons through observation and shared experiences rather than formal instruction, creating a natural transmission of practical wisdom that emphasizes self reliance from an early age. They prioritize traits and skills that offer tangible results over abstract pursuits that carry uncertain payoffs, understanding that real security comes from abilities that remain valuable regardless of economic fluctuations. Education for them becomes selective. They seek knowledge that directly improves their position rather than following paths designed for different eras. This shift promises a cohort better equipped to handle uncertainty because they have watched the consequences of dependency play out and chosen differently. The raw honesty in this development is that it challenges institutions built on old assumptions, forcing them to evolve or lose relevance as more individuals opt for self directed learning. Technological advancements play a supportive role by providing access to information and tools that empower independent action without needing large scale organizational backing. Men use platforms for skill acquisition that allow them to master complex subjects at their own pace, experimenting and iterating until they achieve proficiency. They build personal networks online and offline that connect them with mentors and peers who share the same commitment to straightforward progress. This creates ecosystems of mutual support based on value exchange rather than emotional extraction, leading to innovations that might not have emerged under previous constraints. The storytelling here unfolds like a slow burn, where each small improvement builds toward larger transformations that reshape how men interact with the world around them. Cultural narratives are beginning to reflect these changes, though often in subtle ways, as creators sense the shifting audience preferences toward stories of individual agency and quiet strength. Media that once promoted constant pursuit now sees declining engagement from men who find more value in content that affirms self development and realistic expectations. This feedback loop encourages more balanced portrayals that acknowledge the complexities of modern life without pushing unbalanced ideals. The sobering aspect is that ignoring these audience shifts risks irrelevance, while adapting opens opportunities for deeper, more meaningful exchanges that resonate with lived experiences. Men continue their paths undeterred, focusing on what serves them best and letting the broader conversation catch up naturally. Economic independence, achieved through disciplined saving and investing, allows for greater freedom in choosing how to spend time and resources. Men allocate funds toward experiences that enrich their understanding of the world, such as exploring different regions and learning from diverse environments without the pressure to impress or accommodate others. They develop portfolios that balance risk and reward based on thorough research rather than impulse creating buffers against downturns that hit dependent individuals harder. This financial autonomy translates into mental freedom because decisions stem from choice, not necessity. Friends sharing a drink would recognize this as the kind of smart living that avoids the traps so many fell into before the wake up became widespread. The impact on community structures is profound as fewer men participate in traditional social expectations. They invest in voluntary associations that align with their values and goals. These groups emphasize skill sharing, problem solving, and accountability, fostering environments where growth is encouraged without hidden agendas. The result is stronger, localized networks that provide real support during challenges because they are built on mutual respect and shared purpose rather than obligation. This evolution challenges older models of community that relied on default participation and pushes toward more intentional connections that benefit all involved. The authoritative view is that healthy societies adapt through such organic shifts rather than forcing conformity to outdated frameworks. Biological realities remain constant, despite efforts to downplay them, and men who accept this truth make decisions that honor their natural drives toward achievement and stability. They channel energy into pursuits that satisfy deep seated needs for competence and legacy building, whether through creative works, family planning on their terms, or contributions to fields that advance human knowledge. This acceptance brings clarity, reducing internal conflict that arises from fighting against fundamental aspects of human nature. The raw truth, friends, is that pretending otherwise led to widespread frustration, and now, by aligning with these realities, men find paths that feel authentic and sustainable over decades. As environmental and resource challenges mount, the self reliant mindset positions men to contribute solutions from a place of strength rather than desperation. They innovate in areas like sustainable energy, personal agriculture, and efficient resource management, drawing on their accumulated skills to create practical answers. This proactive stance contrasts with reactive approaches that depend on external systems, showing the power of individual initiative when scaled across many. The wake up call extends to everyone that true progress often comes from those who have stepped back from broken cycles and rebuilt with clearer vision. It is a straightforward observation that dependency weakens while independence strengthens the capacity for meaningful impact. Historical parallels from periods of social upheaval demonstrate how withdrawal from failing systems can precede renewal when individuals prioritize their own viability first. Men today echo those earlier adapters by conserving resources, developing alternative structures, and waiting for conditions to favor renewed engagement on better terms. This patient strategy avoids the pitfalls of premature involvement that could drain hard won gains. The narrative flows with the pacing of real change, slow accumulation, followed by significant shifts that redefine possibilities. Understanding this rhythm helps frame current events as part of a larger pattern rather than isolated anomalies. Psychological studies on motivation and satisfaction support the benefits of autonomy and competence as key drivers of well being, areas where men are excelling by designing lives around these principles. They set goals that challenge them without overwhelming, creating steady progress that builds momentum and self efficacy. This approach counters the exhaustion that came from pursuing externally imposed standards that rarely delivered fulfillment. The sobering reality is that many systems were designed to extract effort while offering minimal intrinsic reward, and opting out allows rediscovery of what truly motivates. Conversations among men reveal shared relief at shedding those burdens and embracing paths that align with personal values. Innovation in personal technology and automation further enhances independence by reducing the need for constant labor in maintenance tasks. Men customize their environments with smart systems that free time for higher value activities like strategic planning or creative endeavors. They learn to integrate these tools effectively, maximizing their potential while maintaining control rather than becoming dependent on them. This mastery reflects the broader theme of selective engagement, where technology serves the user, not the other way around. The raw authority in this lifestyle comes from deliberate choices that compound advantages over time. Social dynamics evolve as men become more selective in all interactions, applying the same standards of reciprocity and value to friendships, professional relationships, and casual encounters. They avoid situations that demand one sided investment, recognizing that true connection requires balance to thrive. This selectivity leads to higher quality engagements that energize rather than deplete, fostering environments where mutual growth is possible. The wake up call is clear. Lowering standards for the sake of participation often leads to regret, while holding firm open space for better alignments when they arise. It feels like advice passed between friends who have learned through experience what works and what does not. Broader implications for policy include potential adjustments in areas like taxation, family law, and social services as behaviors shift and old models prove less effective. Men focused on self reliance advocate for systems that reward contribution without penalizing success, creating incentives that align with observed realities. This pragmatic approach influences discussions at various levels, though change comes gradually as evidence accumulates. The storytelling of societal adaptation shows that individual actions drive institutional responses when enough people move in the same direction. Men are driving that movement through consistent living rather than organized campaigns. Health outcomes improve as stress from unbalanced dynamics decreases, allowing better recovery and preventive care. Men prioritize regular checkups, exercise routines, and mental practices that maintain peak condition throughout life stages. They share knowledge about effective strategies within their networks, accelerating collective improvement without reliance on overburdened public systems. This self directed health management reflects the overall philosophy of taking responsibility for one's domain rather than outsourcing it. The authoritative but straightforward message is that personal agency in health leads to greater longevity and quality of life free from external dependencies. Educational reforms may emerge to better serve young men by emphasizing practical skills, critical analysis, and financial literacy, preparing them for the landscape they will inherit. Curricula that incorporate real world application and resilience training could bridge gaps left by previous approaches that emphasize theory over execution. Men already practicing these principles serve as informal mentors, demonstrating through example what effective preparation looks like. The sobering observation is that education must evolve with societal needs or risk producing graduates ill equipped for current challenges. This evolution supports the ongoing shift toward greater independence and capability. Cultural expressions through art, music, and literature are capturing the essence of this transition, highlighting themes of self discovery, resilience, and redefined purpose. Creators who tap into these currents find audiences hungry for authentic representation of modern male experiences. This resonance strengthens the narrative that the changes underway are meaningful and worthy of exploration. Men consume and contribute to these works, finding validation and inspiration that fuels further progress. The raw truth is that art reflecting reality connects more deeply than idealized versions that ignore lived experiences. Environmental stewardship becomes a natural extension for many as they apply self reliant principles to sustainable living practices that reduce waste and promote efficiency. They experiment with renewable energy sources at the individual level, learning what integrates well with their lifestyles. This hands on approach builds knowledge that could scale if conditions warrant while maintaining personal control. The wake up call here ties back to recognizing limits and working within them rather than assuming endless external solutions. It is a conversation grounded in practicality where friends discuss what they can do today to secure tomorrow. Technological ethics and privacy concerns gain attention as men who value independence scrutinize systems that could undermine autonomy. They advocate for tools that enhance rather than erode the personal control supporting developments that align with self directed living. This vigilance protects the gains made through their choices, ensuring future generations inherit similar freedoms. The narrative builds with careful pacing, emphasizing thoughtful engagement over reactive participation. Understanding these dynamics helps navigate an increasingly complex world with clarity and purpose. As economic landscapes continue evolving, men who have built strong foundations are better positioned to capitalize on emerging opportunities, whether in new industries or revitalize traditional sectors. They maintain flexibility, adapting strategies as data emerges rather than clinging to rigid plans. This agility stems from the mental freedom that comes with reduced obligations, allowing quicker pivots without catastrophic consequences. The straightforward reality is that independence creates options, dependency restricts them. Friends would agree that having choices feels empowering, especially after periods where options seem limited. The collective impact of millions making similar decisions creates subtle but powerful shifts in market demands, consumer behaviors, and social expectations. Businesses adapt by offering products and services that cater to self reliant individuals, from durable goods to educational resources. This realignment reflects changing priorities and reinforces the sustainability of the new paths men are forging. The sobering wake up call remains that these changes are not reversible. By wishful thinking, they require honest adaptation from all parties involved. Men continue refining their approaches, learning from both successes and setbacks with the kind of resilience that comes from owning one's journey completely. They document insights, share selectively, and build upon what works, creating personal frameworks for decision making that stand the test of time. This iterative process mirrors scientific methods applied to daily life, yielding reliable results. The authoritative tone here comes from accumulated evidence rather than speculation, grounding the entire narrative in observable outcomes. Expanding further into long term societal evolution, the reduction in traditional family formations may prompt innovations in how communities support child rearing and elder care through voluntary cooperative models rather than mandated structures. Men participate on terms that respect their boundaries, contributing where they see clear value. This could lead to more efficient and less contentious systems over time. The raw truth is that forcing participation breeds resentment, while voluntary engagement fosters genuine investment. Storytelling around these adaptations highlights human ingenuity in solving problems created by previous imbalances. Psychological freedom from constant people pleasing allows deeper introspection and pursuit of callings that were previously sidelined. Men explore philosophical questions about meaning and legacy, developing worldviews that sustain them through challenges. This inner work strengthens character, providing anchors in turbulent times. The wake up call is that neglecting this aspect leads to hollow achievements, while embracing it creates fulfillment that radiates outward. It feels like deep bar conversation where truths are laid bare without pretense. Global migration patterns and workforce dynamics shift as men seek locations and roles that reward their skills and mindsets. They prioritize environments that value competence and results over other considerations, creating concentrations of capability that drive local progress. This movement influences economies and cultures in receiving areas, fostering competition and innovation. The straightforward analysis shows incentives at work guiding behavior toward better alignments. Men navigating these choices do so with calculated awareness of trade offs and benefits. Health span extension through advanced practices becomes accessible as self reliant men invest in emerging technologies and knowledge that promote longevity. They track biomarkers, adjust lifestyles accordingly, and share effective protocols within trusted circles. This proactive stance contrasts with passive reliance on overburdened medical systems, yielding better individual outcomes. The narrative emphasizes empowerment through knowledge and discipline, creating compelling arcs of personal triumph over circumstance. As we build toward understanding the full scope, these interconnected changes paint a picture of transformation that touches every aspect of life. Men have chosen paths of independence and are living the results with clarity and resolve. The world adjusts gradually, and those who grasp the underlying principles position themselves advantageously. This ongoing story rewards careful observation and adaptive action above all else. Men navigating the evolving world around them are turning their attention toward legacy building in forms that extend beyond immediate relationships, focusing instead on contributions that outlast their own lifetimes through innovations, mentorship, and creations that carry practical value into future decades. They invest effort into documenting processes for problem solving in fields ranging from urban farming techniques to efficient small scale manufacturing, allowing knowledge to spread organically among those who seek self sufficiency without gatekeeping or dependency on large institutions. This approach stems from recognizing that true impact comes from empowering others with tools rather than maintaining control over resources, creating a multiplier effect where individual actions inspire broader capability building across communities. The straightforward reality, friends, is that when men stop expending energy on cycles that offered little lasting return, they channel it into endeavors that strengthen the fabric of what remains stable, even as larger structures strain under their own imbalances. Historical cycles of societal adjustment provide a rhetorical lens through which to view the current moment, showing how previous eras saw groups withdraw from as overburdened systems only to lay groundwork for renewed stability once conditions realigned with practical needs. Men today echo those adaptive phases by developing parallel economies based on barter, like skill exchanges and local trade networks that operate independently of volatile financial markets. They study patterns from past resource scarcities, learning how communities that emphasized resilience over expansion fared better during contractions. This deep engagement with history is not academic posturing, but a tool for strategic foresight, helping them anticipate shifts in labor demands and resource availability. The sobering wake up call lands heavy here because ignoring these precedents leaves people vulnerable while embracing them equips men with frameworks that have proven durable across centuries of upheaval. Philosophical underpinnings of self reliance gain renewed emphasis as men explore ideas around personal sovereignty and ethical living that prioritize consent, reciprocity, and voluntary association over enforced obligations. They dissect concepts of natural law and human incentives, observing how societies thrive when structures respect inherent differences in strengths and drives rather than attempting to flatten them into uniform expectations. This intellectual exploration brings authority to their daily choices because decisions are weighed against timeless principles rather than fleeting cultural moods. In a relaxed bar conversation, you can almost hear the collective exhale as men acknowledge how freeing it feels to align actions with what holds up under scrutiny instead of bending to demands that contradict observable outcomes. The raw truth emerges that sustainable harmony requires acknowledging biology and psychology as they are not as some wish them to be. Long term civilizational impacts from widespread male disengagement point toward potential restructuring of institutions that once depended on high male participation in traditional provider roles. Education systems may pivot toward modular learning paths that reward competence demonstration over seat time, creating graduates better suited for adaptive careers in uncertain times. Healthcare frameworks could incorporate more preventive, self managed approaches, reducing strain on centralized services as individuals take ownership of their vitality. These shifts unfold gradually, with men contributing through selective involvement where they see genuine mutual benefit rather than default sacrifice. The narrative pacing here mirrors the slow accumulation of individual choices leading to systemic evolution, a story of quiet power rather than sudden revolution. Adaptation strategies emphasize diversification of income streams and social connections, allowing men to maintain stability even when certain sectors contract or social norms tighten. They cultivate multiple skill sets from digital security to hands on craftsmanship, ensuring options remain open regardless of technological or economic disruptions. This diversification is paired with intentional community building, where groups form around shared projects like cooperative land management or skill workshops, fostering bonds rooted in productivity instead of emotional extraction. The authoritative observation is that such strategies have historically buffered against shocks, and men applying them now position themselves as anchors in their spheres. Friends would recognize this as smart living, the kind that avoids putting all eggs in one fragile basket. The role of nature and biology receives honest examination as men accept that certain drives toward achievement, protection, and legacy are wired deeply and cannot be indefinitely suppressed without consequence. They design lifestyles that honor these drives through challenging physical pursuits, goal oriented projects, and selective mentoring that satisfy innate calls without requiring unbalanced personal costs. This acceptance reduces internal friction, allowing energy to flow towards constructive outlets rather than suppressed frustration. The wake up call cuts clear that denying these elements leads to widespread discontent, while integrating them creates lives of depth and direction. It is the kind of straightforward talk that resonates because it matches what many have felt but rarely voiced openly. Community rebuilding efforts focus on voluntary networks that emphasize mutual aid based on demonstrated reliability and shared values, creating safety nets that function through trust, earned over time instead of mandated participation. Men contribute expertise in areas like emergency preparedness or sustainable resource use, enhancing collective resilience without assuming endless provider burdens. These networks operate on principles of reciprocity, where giving and receiving balance, naturally avoiding the one sided dynamics that previously eroded participation. The storytelling element reveals human capacity for cooperation when terms are fair and transparent, leading to stronger localized bonds that complement rather than replace individual independence. Legacy building through knowledge preservation takes shape as men archive practical wisdom on topics from water management to conflict resolution, ensuring information survives cultural shifts or institutional failures. They create accessible guides and demonstration projects that allow others to replicate successes, adapting them to local conditions. This preservation mindset stems from understanding that civilizations maintain continuity through transmitted competence, not abstract ideals. The raw authority here lies in actions that speak louder than declarations, building something tangible that benefits those who engage earnestly. Emerging economic models favor agile micro enterprises where men leverage personal skills for niche markets that reward specialization and direct customer relationships, bypassing bloated corporate structures. They experiment with cooperative ownership models that distribute risks and rewards more evenly, fostering environments where innovation thrives without excessive overhead. This entrepreneurial spirit reflects the broader walkaway by creating value on terms that respect personal boundaries and long term sustainability. The sobering reality is that traditional employment paths often demanded too much for too little security, while these alternatives restore agency and proportional return. Philosophical reflections on time and mortality encourage men to prioritize high impact activities that align with finite lifespans, focusing efforts on what generates lasting satisfaction and contribution. They structure days around deep work sessions balanced with restorative practices, ensuring sustained output without burnout. This temporal awareness sharpens decision making, filtering out distractions that do not serve core purposes. In the relaxed flow of conversation, it becomes evident how many previously wasted hours on obligations that yielded hollow results, and how reclaiming that time transforms trajectories. Civilizational resilience increases as pockets of self reliant men develop capabilities that can scale during crises, from local food production to decentralized energy solutions. They collaborate on research into robust systems that withstand supply chain failures or governance strains, creating blueprints for adaptive living. This proactive development counters narratives of inevitable decline by demonstrating practical pathways forward. The authoritative but raw message is that strength emerges from preparation and realism, not from clinging to failing models. Biological imperatives around fatherhood and mentorship find expression through voluntary involvement where men choose engagements that allow influence without legal or financial overexposure. They guide younger individuals through skill development and character building, sharing insights that equip the next wave for similar independence. This selective approach preserves the drive toward guidance while protecting personal stability. The wake up call underscores that meaningful legacy does not require traditional structures when alternatives honor the same underlying needs. Innovation hubs spring up organically as men pool resources for collaborative projects in fields like regenerative agriculture or open source technology, creating solutions tailored to current challenges. These hubs operate on merit and results, emphasizing experimentation and iteration over hierarchy. The outcomes often surpass expectations because participants bring focused energy unburdened by unrelated demands. Storytelling around these initiatives highlights the creative surge that follows liberation from draining cycles, painting a picture of renewal through redirection. Policy adaptation may involve incentives for skill based contributions and flexible living arrangements, recognizing that rigid frameworks no longer match behavioral realities. Men advocate through example, demonstrating viability of alternative models that reduce systemic strain. This bottom up influence shapes discussions more effectively than confrontation, as results speak clearly. The straightforward truth is that policies ignoring ground level shifts lose effectiveness over time, while those aligning with them gain traction. Nature connection deepens as men spend time in outdoor pursuits that build appreciation for natural laws and cycles, informing their decision making with grounded perspectives. They observe ecosystems to draw analogies for human systems understanding, interdependence, and limits. This connection reinforces self reliant mindsets by showing how balance emerges from respecting boundaries and flows. Friends at the bar would share stories of clarity gained from such immersion away from artificial pressures. Long term health strategies incorporate emerging research on cognitive enhancement and physical optimization, allowing men to maintain peak function across decades. They experiment with protocols for recovery and performance tracking progress through measurable indicators. This investment in personal capital yields returns in productivity and life quality far exceeding costs. The narrative builds as one of disciplined investment where small, consistent actions compound into profound advantages. Global resource dynamics encourage men to develop localized solutions that reduce vulnerability to international disruptions, fostering self contained systems for essentials. They study geopolitics to anticipate shifts, adjusting strategies proactively rather than reactively. This foresight protects gains and opens opportunities in changing landscapes. The sobering observation is that dependency on distant systems carries hidden risks, while proximity and control enhance security. Ethical frameworks evolve around personal responsibility and non interference, allowing men to live according to principles that minimize conflict while maximizing autonomy. They engage only where value is clear, avoiding entanglements that compromise core values. This clarity strengthens character and relationships that do form on solid ground. The raw truth resonates because it cuts through noise to what actually sustains human flourishing. Educational alternatives expand through apprenticeships and project based learning, where men facilitate hands on mastery in trades and strategic thinking, preparing participants for real world application. These models emphasize results and adaptability over standardized testing, creating capable individuals ready for independence. The impact ripples outward as graduates carry forward the ethos of self direction. Cultural preservation efforts focus on documenting traditions of competence and resilience, ensuring valuable knowledge endures beyond transient trends. Men curate collections of practical lore and techniques, sharing them selectively with those demonstrating commitment. This stewardship maintains continuity in a fragmenting world. The authoritative pacing here reflects careful selection and transmission rather than broad dissemination. Innovation in materials and processes allows small scale production of essentials, reducing reliance on fragile global chains. Men collaborate on designs that prioritize durability and repairability, creating products suited for long term use. These developments embody the philosophy of building to last rather than consume quickly. Philosophical inquiry into freedom and duty leads to balanced views where personal liberty pairs with chosen responsibilities that enhance rather than diminish life. Men navigate this terrain with thoughtful deliberation, crafting existences that honor both aspects. The wake up call is that true freedom requires discipline and discernment to avoid new forms of bondage. As these threads weave together, the overall picture emerges of a transformed landscape where men have forged paths of substance and autonomy. The changes run deep, touching individual lives and collective structures in interconnected ways. Those who understand the underlying dynamics are best equipped to thrive within them, maintaining clarity amid ongoing evolution. This continues as is the human story of adaptation through honest reckoning with reality and deliberate action towards sustainable futures. Men further explore advanced concepts in systems thinking, applying them to personal and communal organization to create efficient structures that scale with minimal friction. They map interdependencies in their environments, identifying leverage points for positive change while avoiding cascading failures. This holistic view strengthens decision frameworks, ensuring actions produce intended outcomes over extended periods. The relaxed yet authoritative tone comes from lived application of these ideas, turning abstract knowledge into practical power. Resource management strategies emphasize circular economies at the individual level, where waste from one process becomes input for another, maximizing efficiency and minimizing external dependencies. Men experiment with composting, energy recovery, and material reuse, building closed loop systems that demonstrate resilience. These practices align with natural principles observed in ecosystems, providing models for sustainable living. The sobering truth is that linear consumption models strain limits while circular approaches extend viability. Mentorship networks expand informally as experienced men share distilled insights with those seeking guidance, focusing on mindset shifts and skill acquisition that accelerate independence. These relationships remain voluntary and bounded, preserving the autonomy of all involved. The storytelling flows through examples of transformation where applied knowledge unlocks potential previously untapped. Technological integration continues with emphasis on open architectures that prevent lock in allowing men to maintain control over their tools and data. They contribute to projects that enhance usability and security, fostering ecosystems that serve users first. This vigilance protects the independence gained through careful choices. Long range planning incorporates scenario analysis, preparing for various futures from technological breakthroughs to resource constraints, ensuring adaptability remains constant. Men refine contingency approaches through regular review, adjusting as new information emerges. This disciplined foresight distinguishes their paths from reactive living. The collective momentum builds as more individuals align with these principles, creating critical mass for broader cultural and economic realignment. The narrative arc reaches toward horizons where balanced dynamics may reemerge on firmer foundations, though the current focus remains on personal and communal fortification. This represents the ongoing human endeavor to navigate complexity with truth and resolve. Men are uncovering layers of meaning and purpose that run deeper than the surface level pursuits that once dominated their days, as they redirect focus toward questions of existence, contribution, and the kind of imprint they want to leave on a world that feels increasingly uncertain and fast moving. They explore contemplative practices drawn from various traditions, not as escape, but as tools for sharpening clarity and maintaining inner steadiness when external pressures try to pull them off course. This inner work allows them to confront hard truth about human limitations and potentials without flinching, creating a foundation of resolve that supports bold actions in the outer world. Friends sitting around with a cold drink would lean in at this point because we have all felt that pull towards something bigger, once the noise of unbalanced demands quiets down. And what emerges is a drive to build things that matter beyond temporary satisfactions. The authoritative edge here comes from recognizing that without this depth, men risk trading one form of emptiness for another, so they pursue it with the same discipline they apply to finances and fitness. Future technological landscapes invite men to engage as creators and guardians rather than passive consumers as they study emerging fields like synthetic biology and advanced computing to understand how these tools can enhance human capability without eroding the self reliance they have worked hard to establish. They experiment with small scale applications that solve local problems such as precision agriculture using sensor networks or custom fabrication setups that reduce dependence on distant supply lines. This hands on involvement keeps them ahead of curves while maintaining control over how technology integrates into their lives, avoiding the trap of becoming servants to systems that demand constant attention and data. The sobering wake up call is that technology amplifies existing choices, so men who have already chosen independence use it to multiply their freedom rather than dilute it through distraction or over reliance. The raw truth in conversation feels like admitting that gadgets are only as good as the mindset behind them, and many are now wielding them with clear intention. Intergenerational transmission of wisdom takes on new forms as men craft narratives and demonstrations for younger minds, emphasizing resilience, strategic thinking, and the value of earning respect through competence instead of seeking approval through compliance. They organize informal gatherings where skills are passed through doing rather than lecturing, whether repairing machinery or analyzing risk in uncertain ventures, creating bonds that strengthen the chain of knowledge without formal institutions dictating terms. This approach ensures that hard earned lessons about boundaries and self valuation carry forward, preventing the next wave from repeating patterns that led to widespread withdrawal. Storytelling flows naturally here, as tales of personal trials and adjustments illustrate principles better than any abstract lecture, allowing the younger ones to internalize the sobering realities of unbalanced dynamics through relatable examples. Environmental integration becomes a practical philosophy where men design living spaces and routines that work in harmony with natural cycles, reducing waste and building regenerative habits that support long term viability on both personal and communal scales. They implement water harvesting techniques, soil restoration projects, and biodiversity enhancements around their properties, turning potential vulnerabilities into assets that provide food security and psychological benefits. This connection to the land grounds their decision making, reminding them of limits and abundances that no social narrative can override. In a relaxed bar setting, you hear the straightforward acknowledgement that humans are part of larger systems, and ignoring that truth leads to unnecessary hardship, while working with it builds quiet strength and appreciation. The authoritative voice underscores that true independence includes responsibility toward the resources that sustain life. Ethical evolution unfolds as men refine their personal codes around interaction and contribution, focusing on principles that promote fairness without requiring self sacrifice at the expense of survival. They navigate moral dilemmas by weighing outcomes against core values like honesty, reciprocity, and non coercion, creating frameworks that stand up under pressure. This refinement process draws from observed consequences of past imbalances where good intentions without boundaries led to exploitation and burnout. The wake up call lands with weight because ethical living in chaotic times demands clarity, not sentimentality. And men who have walked away are now forging codes that protect their progress while allowing selective collaboration. It feels like deep, honest talk among friends, where we admit the relief of dropping performative morality in favor of what actually works. Space and exploration mindsets capture attention as men apply frontier thinking to earthly challenges, treating resource constraints and environmental shifts as opportunities for innovation, similar to how past pioneers approached unknown territories. They study propulsion systems, material sciences, and closed loop habitats, not necessarily for literal space travel, but for developing technologies that solve terrestrial problems with the same rigor and creativity. This expansive perspective expands their problem solving toolkit, fostering solutions that scale from individual setups to larger networks. The raw authority comes from channeling that exploratory drive, which was once misdirected into unproductive pursuits, now fueling advancements that enhance autonomy and resilience. Philosophical depth on freedom reveals that authentic liberty requires ongoing vigilance against new dependencies, whether technological, social, or ideological. So men cultivate discernment to spot subtle encroachments before they take root. They practice scenarios where they test their own resolve, maintaining the ability to walk away from any arrangement that compromises core independence. This ongoing cultivation keeps their choices fresh and aligned, preventing complacency that could erode gains. The sobering realization is that freedom is not a destination, but a practice, and those who treat it as such build lives of enduring strength. Conversation around this carries the relaxed tone of shared understanding that once you taste real agency, you guard it carefully. Skill areas like advanced data analysis and predictive modeling empower men to forecast personal and local trends with greater accuracy, allowing proactive adjustments in careers, investments, and living strategies. They apply these tools to model various life scenarios, refining approaches based on probable outcomes rather than wishful projections. This analytical capability complements their hands on skills, creating well rounded competence that adapts to accelerating change. The narrative here builds with the pacing of steady mastery, where each new ability layers onto previous ones, compounding advantages over years. Community defense and preparedness concepts gain practical application as men develop protocols for collective security that respect individual autonomy while providing mutual protection during disruptions. They focus on communication networks, resource sharing agreements, and skill inventories that activate only when needed, avoiding permanent entanglements. This balanced preparedness reflects the broader philosophy of selective engagement, where readiness does not equal constant involvement. The authoritative but raw message is that strong communities emerge from capable individuals who choose cooperation wisely rather than from forced collectivism. Artisanal revival sees men returning to crafts like woodworking, metalworking, and traditional building techniques that provide tangible satisfaction and durable goods independent of mass production vulnerabilities. They blend these with modern precision tools, creating hybrid methods that honor heritage while improving efficiency. This revival satisfies creative drives and builds self sufficiency in material needs. Friends would connect with the straightforward joy described in making something lasting with your own efforts after years of abstract labor that felt disconnected. Cognitive liberty movements emphasize protecting mental autonomy through mindful consumption of information and deliberate cultivation of focus against constant distractions. Men curate their inputs, seeking sources that challenge and inform without manipulating emotions, creating mental environments that support clear thinking. This protection of cognition underpins all other efforts because without it, even the best strategies falter. The wake up call is direct that unguarded minds become battlegrounds for external agendas, while disciplined ones drive personal sovereignty. Interpersonal dynamics in selective relationships evolve toward clear agreements and regular reassessments, ensuring alignment remains mutual and beneficial. Men apply the same standards of value and respect they expect, receiving them only where demonstrated consistently. This evolution reduces friction and allows deeper connections when they form on solid ground. The relaxed storytelling aspect highlights how dropping pretense leads to more authentic exchanges that actually nourish rather than deplete. Global adaptation patterns continue revealing that men in varied contexts are finding parallel strategies tailored to local conditions, from rural self sufficiency to urban skill networking. This diversity strengthens the overall movement by providing multiple models of success that others can adapt. The sobering truth is that human ingenuity responds to pressure with creativity when not hindered by unbalanced expectations. Legacy documentation through digital and physical archives ensures that practical philosophies and techniques endure, providing reference points for future generations facing their own challenges. Men curate these collections with care, focusing on what has proven effective across conditions. This stewardship embodies long view thinking that prioritizes continuity. Sustainability metrics become personal benchmarks as men track their impact on resources and communities, adjusting behaviors to maintain positive balances. They develop custom indicators for well being and resilience, going beyond conventional measures to capture what truly sustains them. This data driven self assessment keeps efforts aligned with reality. Philosophical synthesis brings together insights from multiple domains, creating comprehensive worldviews that guide decision making with coherence and depth. Men refine these syntheses through reflection and application, ensuring they remain living documents rather than rigid dogmas. The authoritative tone stems from tested integration that holds up under daily use. Exploration of consciousness and awareness practices deepens their capacity for presence and insight, allowing better navigation of complex situations without emotional hijacking. They integrate these with physical disciplines, creating whole person development that enhances every area of life. The raw truth in bar conversation is that mastering oneself internally makes external mastery more attainable. Resource innovation focuses on alternative materials and energy forms that can be produced locally, reducing vulnerabilities in global chains. Men collaborate on experiments that yield practical prototypes adaptable to different environments. This innovation cycle embodies the proactive spirit that defines their current path. Ethical technology use guidelines emerge from their experiences, emphasizing tools that augment rather than replace human judgment and effort. They advocate for designs that preserve agency, sharing insights that help others make informed choices. This responsible engagement prevents new forms of dependency. Intergenerational dialogue forums created informally allow exchange of perspectives across age groups, fostering mutual learning and respect without hierarchical imposition. These exchanges strengthen social fabric through voluntary participation. The storytelling here weaves personal evolutions into collective wisdom. Long horizon visioning helps men set goals that span decades, aligning daily actions with distant objectives for compounded impact. They review and adjust these visions, periodically maintaining relevance amid change. This practice distinguishes strategic living from short term reactivity. The unfolding narrative of adaptation reveals humanity's capacity to recalibrate when old equilibria break, creating space for new expressions of strength and cooperation. Men stand at the forefront of this recalibration through their choices and examples, building toward futures where balance emerges from realism rather than rhetoric. Men push into quantum inspired thinking, for decision frameworks embracing uncertainty as a feature rather than flaw developing probabilistic approaches that account for multiple variables in complex systems. They apply this to personal planning and risk assessment, creating robust strategies that flex with emerging realities. This mindset shift enhances their ability to thrive amid volatility. Biomimicry techniques borrowed from natural designs inform their engineering and organizational efforts, producing solutions that are efficient, elegant, and sustainable. Men study organism strategies for resilience, applying analogous principles to human scale challenges. The sobering observation is that nature has tested designs over eons, and ignoring those lessons repeats avoidable errors. Narrative crafting around personal agency spreads through word of mouth and demonstrated lives, inspiring others to examine their own positions with fresh eyes. These stories emphasize transformation through subtraction and addition in balanced measure. The relaxed authoritative delivery makes the message land as relatable truth rather than distant theory. Holistic system mapping allows men to visualize interconnections in their lives and environments, identifying optimizations that yield outsized benefits. They use simple tools and mental models to maintain clarity without overcomplication. This mapping supports informed choices that compound positively. The continued evolution points towards societies where individual strength underpins collective capability, reducing fragility that comes from over centralization. Men contribute to this evolution, one deliberate step at a time, living the principles they value. This represents the raw human response to imbalance, forging paths of substance. Men continue to forge ahead by integrating timeless principles of discipline and foresight into every layer of their existence, discovering that the greatest form of rebellion against unsustainable expectations is the steady construction of lives rooted in verifiable competence and unapologetic self direction. They examine the intersections of psychology and economics, realizing that when internal motivations align with external incentives, the resulting momentum carries individuals through periods of cultural turbulence with remarkable steadiness. This alignment allows them to pursue ventures that not only sustain, but elevate their positions, whether through refined expertise in specialized trades or through thoughtful curation of environments that promote sustained focus and creativity. The sobering truth lands with the weight of experience that many once chased validation in arenas designed to extract without replenishing. And now, by turning inward and outward with clear eyes, they reclaim authority over their trajectories in ways that feel profoundly liberating. Friends gathered at the bar would raise a glass to this because we know the quiet satisfaction that comes when the fog of obligatory performance lifts and what remains is a man standing firmly on ground he has prepared himself. The broader horizon reveals potential for renewed equilibrium, where those who have adapted through withdrawal begin to model frameworks that could support healthier interactions if approached with mutual recognition of strengths and boundaries. Men are not closing doors permanently, but holding them open only for arrangements that respect the lessons of the past decades, where one sided giving eroded trust and vitality. They envision futures where partnerships form from positions of strength rather than necessity, fostering exchanges that enhance rather than diminish the participants involved. This vision is grounded in observable patterns of human behavior across history, where balance returned only after imbalances had run their course and individuals had learned to value their own contributions more accurately. The raw authority in this outlook stems from refusing to romanticize the old ways while remaining open to better ones built on realism and reciprocity. As these developments unfold, the emphasis on personal sovereignty expands into collective expressions of resilience, where small groups of capable men collaborate on initiatives that address practical needs without recreating dependency structures. They focus on knowledge repositories, skill cooperatives, and resource networks that operate transparently and voluntarily, creating safety valves for society during times of strain. This work carries the relaxed confidence of men who have already done the hard internal accounting and emerge clearer about what they will and will not tolerate. The wake up call remains direct that ignoring the signals of disengagement will not restore previous dynamics, but adapting to them with honesty could pave pathways toward more durable social architectures. It feels like the kind of straightforward conversation where we acknowledge the messiness of change while committing to navigate it with integrity and purpose. Men are also deepening their engagement with questions of legacy through tangible acts that ripple beyond their immediate circles, such as mentoring in technical disciplines or contributing to open projects that democratize access to essential capabilities. These acts satisfy the innate drive toward impact without requiring surrender of hard won independence, serving as bridges between generations that transmit hard truths about effort reciprocity and the cost of illusion. The narrative of this era is one of recalibration, where withdrawal serves as precursor to selective re-engagement on terms that honor the full spectrum of human realities rather than selective portions that favor one side. This pacing of change, slow and deliberate, mirrors the way true strength accumulates through consistent application rather than dramatic gestures. The final layers of this transformation highlight the empowerment that comes from embracing limitations as guides rather than obstacles, leading men to lives of greater depth satisfaction and unfiltered engagement with what is real. They carry forward the understanding that protecting one's peace is not withdrawal from life, but the foundation for engaging it more effectively when the moment calls for it. This mindset equips them to face whatever comes next with steadiness and clarity, turning potential adversities into a catalyst for further refinement. The authoritative yet raw essence here is that men have learned through direct consequence what sustains them and what does not, and they are living accordingly with no need for external permission or applause. Shout out to the 1 hour gang for sticking with it all the way to the end and seeing the full picture of what is unfolding around us. If you are enjoying these angry guy videos and they are helping you see things clearer, you can show some support by buying me a Red Bull using the link in the description of the video. What did you think about what we discussed here? Do you agree with the direction things are heading? And leave a comment on the video sharing your thoughts. Like the video if you like. And do not forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA men walking away in cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.